jokey. Since I couldn't go to the beach today, the morning show folks were wonderful enough to bring a little of the beach to me. And Gerald Lynas, who is a sand sculptor, not just simple castles in the sand or sand angels as I used to make when I was a kid. Gerald is really an artist, and whose canvas is the beach. First of all, welcome. You are even now working on your latest creation. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
I don't want to disturb you too much. What are you making today? You said, I asked you earlier, I said, what are you going to be making? You said, I have no idea.
I have no idea. It's my unconscious mind coming out in limited material here, but on the beach it's unlimited material, so it's unlimited unconscious mind.
What's it starting to look like to you? What do you think?
Well, it's almost all physics and engineering at the moment. I had so little material to work with that I decided to make it hollow. So I have a problem now of building walls, and eventually I'll decorate the surface or build a figure into it or somehow make it pretty, make it interesting for people to look at.
Next time you'll try and bring you more sand. Do you realize what this took for us to get all this stuff here? Now, we wanted to show the folks some of your work. There's a book out because your work is not permanent.
Well, this work is not permanent, but I also produce the book. So I'm a photographer and a designer and produce films and have done a film about this subject as well. So I do work in more permanent media, and this is just vacation fun.
Indeed. Let's take a look at a few examples of Jerry's work, because we have some slides. Now, this is what, Jerry? Can you see?
Giant, and that's there to show scale. This is 35 feet across from one shoulder to the other.
35 feet?
Yeah, it's about 50 tons of sand having been moved in a 12-hour period. About 7 hours of moving sand and about 5 or 6 hours of sculpting it.
Unbelievable. All right, let's see the next. Okay, now, oh, look at that.
Snow. This was made on the lawn of the Museum of Natural History. And snow is a little less comfortable than working in sand.
I think.
This mammoth is 38 feet long, its actual size.
And how long did it take for you to create that?
It took about 40 hours of non-stop work.
Bet you weren't working in your bathing suit.
Not at all.
Okay, how about the next one?
Now, this is a piece that I did for the 1980 Olympics in Lake Placid. It's 25 feet tall and 60 feet wide, and it took 15 hours a day for 5 weeks.
Interesting story behind that commission. Share that with us.
Well, they saw the mammoth in the media, which was covered by most of the networks and in the paper, and they asked me to submit a proposal, which I did. The interesting story was that there was no snow. And so we made this piece out of the scrapings from the highway and the speed skating rink. I had one assistant, and we worked night and day forever.
All right, let's see the next one. I think we have a couple more. Ah, yes.
Oh, this has a flying disc in it for scale, but it's also my primary working tool. I'm a semi-professional Frisbee player, and I frequently do anatomy, and in this case I followed my own anatomy to build this piece.
Joe, you have a nice hand.
Thanks.
All right.
Well, this was my first major urban work. I was riding my bicycle on Broadway at 88th Street past a construction site, and I saw available sand, and it had just rained, so the moist sand was quite ready for me to work. But one caution, aside from the cautions that appear in my book about health hazards doing this hard work, that piece, construction sand oftentimes has lime in it, and my skin fell off the next day on my hands, so warning to other people not to do that.
And it isn't easy working in a medium like this. Why does it attract you? It isn't permanent when it's on the beach. The water does create kind of an additional artistic effect on your creations. What attracts you?
Well, first of all, it's an enormous amount of free material that allows me to work on a tremendous scale. And then, of course, there's the recording of it. My production company made a wonderful film, which is doing very well. The book is a result of it, so that's more or less permanent as things are. And also the interaction with people on the beach and the tide is very performance-oriented. I guess. So it's not depressing when the tide comes in or when somebody accidentally, well, sort of... I wouldn't say it's depressing. It's melancholy. It's a little sad, and it's very beautiful. Accidents happen. Tears come out of eyes. Chins fall off. Things become 5,000 years old in a moment, and that's... very beautiful to me. I love to sit and watch that happen quietly and pensively. Well, we're going to let you go back to work now. What are you working? Are you working with water? Well, I have a hose here to try to approximate beach conditions, because typically I have the tide water to work with. Normally, I let the tide go out, and I follow it out. In this case, there's no water available, so we had to bring it in artificially.
Now, how long will this last today, do you think? Are you going to leave it here on 67th Street? I bet you it'll last about 30 seconds.
It'll last as soon as until your prop people take it away. So,
well, we're going to let you go back to work, and we're going to check in and try and find out what this is later on in the show. It is going to be something.
Okay, yes. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to see a clip.
Okay, all right. Well, are we going to...
I'm going to voice over that clip?
You better.
Okay. Let's see what it shows. This is from Samsung, a piece that my company produced. Here I'm stacking raw material, probably 50 tons of work. And here I'm cutting details with a putty knife that catches light in a nice way. Here's some architecture at the top of the piece and an organic face next to it.
What kind of tools do you use besides?
You'll see. Mostly seashells and things like that. I'm cutting a face. I'm behind a huge mound, and here I'm doing mirror images. Now, these are older pieces, 4 faces.
Oh, I love that one.
This is a monster. And here's one about 20 feet long that's a man with a bearded face. And here's the inundation part where you see the tide moving in and collapsing sections. And in the next cut, you will see a tremendous collapse as this whole wall falls down.
How does that make you feel, watching that happen?
It's inevitable, but I'm also an ecologist, and I love to do things that don't damage the environment. And so when I'm finished with my work, the tide comes in, cleans up the beach, and it disappears.
Fascinating, and you never know. We're back out now, looking at your latest creation, and you never know what it's going to be until it is?
That's right. Actually, until it's gone, because the interaction with the tide produces a new piece. And when it's gone, that's when I know what it was.
Now, what part of this are you going to work on next?
Well, I'm going to build up the wall to try to make it look larger, and then I'm going to start manipulating the surface, and I'll probably try to catch light by doing tunnels and bridges, and maybe do some figures to prove that I'm an artist.
Right. Okay, we'll check back in with you later. Thanks, Jerry.
Bye, Ann.
Jerry's going back to work on the sand sculpture. We don't know what it is yet, but we're going to find out. Coming up next on the morning show, hot rock star Huey Lewis, and still to come, silver medalist Nelson Vales, plus Menudo!
What we're going to do in just a moment is check on the progress of Jerry Lynas working on a very special sand sculpture in honor of Labor Day here on the morning show. But first, it's time to turn our attention to the world of news, and with the latest on a search in Queens by police, here's Carol Iavana. Thank you, Carol, very, very much. What we're going to do right now is check on Jerry's progress on this sculpture. It's looking absolutely marvelous. What is it in total? Does it have a title yet in your mind, Jerry?
How about bathtub?
Bathtub, okay. I thought giant sneaker there for a second, the way it looked like you could...
Well, it looks a little bit like a sarcophagus because this guy's eyes are closed and because he looks like he's from antiquity, but I still have no idea. It's really stream of consciousness, and it's like artistic psychotherapy, if you will.
Well, this has to be a little bit different, working here with a good collection of spectators as opposed to the solitude of the beach, huh?
I usually don't have solitude on the beach. If I build an enormous piece of sculpture that's 50 feet long, I have a crowd.
I guess you could have aircraft landing by it, too, yeah. I didn't think about that. Well, it's wonderful, wonderful work. We won't interrupt you anymore. We'll get on to the business of weather. You talk about sometimes, or usually, your sculptures wind up getting washed away by the tide. Maybe a thunderstorm will wash them away today, Chair.
I don't think so. It looks like it's going to hold out for me, and they always get washed away in the tide.
Okay, thank you.
Does.
A pleasure to see you, and a pleasure to see your work, too. Thank you so much. Let's turn our attention, shall we, to the subject of weather. We'll check our temperatures around the area first of all. All right, before we tell you about our Menudo ticket giveaway.
We are part of a Menudo sand.
Yes, we are. We're going to go outside to check on Jerry's sand sculpture.
That's right.
And let's see.
What is it? Did he tell you what it was?
He doesn't know yet himself. Look at that. Look at the detail on that.
It's amazing. It'll be finished sometime later on this afternoon?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Let's hope it doesn't rain.
I hope not, too. It's
right.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jerry. Good work.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have something very exciting. We're going to give you a chance.